Well, good evening, everyone. I'm John Carlin, along with Lindsay Ward and Brittany McGraw, and we're here tonight to talk with you about these school shootings. There's a lot of questions out there. We've got to find an answer, but we've got to figure out what's causing it first. Is it a gun issue? Is it a mental health issue? Is it a societal parenting issue? Is it all of the above? And then, most importantly, what can we do together to prevent another shooting in one of our schools?
And after the shooting in Florida, the leaders here at WSLS10, we sat around a table, a conference room table. We were discussing the news, discussing school safety, and we thought, you know what, we want to hear from the viewers this time. This is obviously a highly political issue and not something that we really want to lead the conversation on. That's what we want you to do. We want to hear what you have to say.
Right. So tonight, that's exactly what we want. We want to hear from you about your ideas and your solutions and important questions that you want us to ask local lawmakers, or issues that you'd like for us to dig into and investigate. We want to make sure that we are covering news every day that really matters to you, your family, and your kids.
Yeah, and again, like Lindsay said, we don't want to necessarily lead that conversation. We all have our cell phones with us, and so we'll be looking at your comments and your questions, or what you want us to talk about, and your suggestions as they come in on our Facebook pages. So this is what we want to do. And there's so many ways that you can come at this, and I can already hear someone's going to say, oh, the liberal media, you guys don't like guns, and that's why we just said we want you to lead this conversation.
Right.
And there's going to be some people out there that are going to be anti-gun, and there's going to be some people out there that think the way to stop somebody with a gun is another person with a gun, and none of us are going to take a position on that. We really want you to drive this conversation. But guys, I want to start out with what I think is the most interesting question that's out there right now, and that is having teachers be armed.
Yeah, this is. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, we already have a lot of people who are commenting, and I do want to say, Tim Boone, who was watching us on Facebook Live, he said, we used to take our guns to school on the bus and leave them in the office for hunting. Maybe it's a society problem and not a gun problem. And that's actually a conversation that came up in the newsroom because, some folks said, hey, when I was in school, everybody went hunting.
Every pickup truck had a gun rack in the back. And you grew up in Allegheny County.
All the guys would go hunting before school, and they would leave it in the gun rack in the back of the truck in the parking lot, and it was not anything that anyone would blink an eye at.
And back then, nobody ever had. We didn't have shootings in schools, and lots of people had guns. And so to me, that points to a societal issue, right?
Absolutely.
People had guns on school grounds back then, but we didn't have these issues. And so now, and of course, Liberty Christian Academy, this is a story that we've done. They have staff members who are always armed and ready. We've got a soundbite that we want to play right now and talk a little bit about it. But Liberty Christian strongly believes in this, and it's taken them about 2 years to ramp up. And now they've got a place where some of the teachers who want to, carry guns to school. And we've had emails from parents who said, that's why I sent my kid there. So I think we should be able to get to a soundbite from, I think Mindy Combs is a parent.
That is one of the reasons why I chose LCA. Not because of their biblical foundations, but also because of the safety measures that are taken more so than at public school systems.
The key is that you have to find and you have to train the people that you're going to allow to carry inside a school building. And it makes our community feel safer, and it makes our staff and our teachers feel safer.
I know a little something about law enforcement.
All right. So so viewers, what do you think?
We have a lot of people who are chiming in. We have Jim Hamlet, who has said that put veterans as guards at the schools, and as arm the veterans and give the teachers special training and having biometric guns, so only the teachers could shoot it.
Yeah, Charlie Burnett said, if you arm teachers, and I support this idea, they should attend law enforcement firearms training from law enforcement instructors. A weekend course wouldn't suffice. And that's pretty interesting, because I did see a piece that actually another network did many years ago about training civilians to be able to defend people in the event of a mass shooting. And that was one thing that the story talked about, how law enforcement officers and military, this is something that they train for regularly.
Right.
And a lot of times when you put a civilian in that situation who does not have that regular training, they cannot defend themselves or everyone in that situation as they think that they might be able to.
Right. Well, and you think about the parallel that I think of is the guys on the airplanes now.
Yeah.
The air marshals. They're sitting in the back of that plane in case it gets hijacked. They have a gun. They're trained.
Yeah.
They know what to do, and they've had a lot of training. I think it's a long way from that person who probably has some sort of federal law enforcement background to a third grade teacher.
Right, right.
And so if you're going to put guns in teachers' hands, to Brittany's point, I think they really have to know what they're doing.
And that's what a lot of people are chiming in, saying that if we're going to arm teachers, they need to be trained. And that's something that Kentucky actually proposed this year in their state legislature, was to arm teachers, but it was a teacher who already had a concealed carry and then would receive more training. So that's something that state is looking at. No word on where that is in their legislature, but it's something that they were looking at, at doing. And that was actually before the Florida school shooting. They had proposed that in Kentucky.
Interesting. Interesting. So I don't know where we come down on this. So many sound bites that we've run, even from people in Florida, have said, well, look, if there was somebody else with a gun in there, more kids would have died, not less, because then it evolves into a shootout. Right.
And Andrea Russell is saying army teachers is not the answer. Right. So we have a lot of people who are chiming in on both sides.
I'd like to hear why. I'd like to hear why they say that. Not that I'm asking them to defend themselves, but so we have that point to discuss.
Right. Anthony Peterson, arming someone is the answer. Let the teacher decide to be a concealed carry. So, and that's what, a lot of school districts across our viewing area are discussing, adding school resource officers. So someone is armed at an elementary school level and on the elementary school campuses. I mean, that's something that Allegheny has talked about, Halifax, Roanoke County, and they're hoping to add more resource officers to those elementary schools. Roanoke City leaders are asking for money for a similar proposal. And in fact, Superintendent Dr. Rita Bishop says they're hoping to create a task force on gun violence, and she also wants to reevaluate fire drills in Roanoke City.
Unless the fire alarm is accompanied by the principal saying, this is for real, or this is a drill, everybody participates, or whatever, but saying something, I think that we just can't have fire alarms as usual.
Now, the school system spends $1.3 million a year on security, and we're talking about Roanoke City there, and we've already seen
So is this because the gunman used the fire alarm system to get students out in the hallway, so now they want to, is that what she was responding to there?
Right.
I'm sorry, I didn't know the context for Rita's comment.
Well, it's interesting. So you mentioned about Allegheny County Schools adding resource officers or adding money for resource officers. That was actually a story that I covered last week, and the Board of Supervisors very quickly approved to transfer $40,000 to the Sheriff's Office so that they could cover overtime, so that they could have security school resource officer in the elementary schools. So now it's not just in a lot of areas, because I did a story also last week about in Roanoke County schools, you have the full-time school resource officers in the middle and the high schools, but not in the elementary schools.
Not in the elementary schools.
Right, the officers do visit, but it's not full-time coverage. So there are a lot of districts who are trying to figure out that balancing act. Allegheny County said, hey, we want to figure out how to have full-time coverage in all of our schools. Other districts are saying, hey, we have to evaluate and assess and see what works for our district and our jurisdiction.
Can I bring up an idea that was expressed to me today? A guy said to me, look, a lot of police departments have little satellite offices all over town so the police can get there more quickly. So instead of, wherever, just having on a street corner, why not have a satellite office in some of the space in the schools? I mean, the locality already owns the school. The space is, and I know some of our schools are overcrowded, but I mean, the space, you could carve out that space pretty easily. So police would be coming and going from there all the time. And it would be a satellite office for a police station. It would put more officers there just by virtue of, they're changing their shifts. I mean, whatever it is, or that's where they are when they're not out patrolling.
It's a very interesting idea.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, because a lot of the complaint is that these you know, crazies, let's call them crazies, who do this and they go onto campuses, and that they know that there's one person with a gun, and that's one school resource officer. So if you have multiple people who are armed, you know, going in and out of the school at any given time of the day, that may deter them. So that would be very interesting.
It might. I think if these guys are determined enough, I don't know that there's anything that anybody can do, which comes back to they can't get the gun in the first place. So who thinks it's a mental health issue? And I don't mean,
Interesting
Yeah.
that
you
you
know
brought
what I'm
that
saying?
up, because
Yes?
that was Patricia Casement-Hill. That's what she said. Issue number 1, mental health. Give the student help when first recognized. And then issue number 2, and this keeps coming up, bullying. Hold the bully and their parents accountable.
Yeah, a lot of people actually
there you
chiming
go.
in on bullying and kind of going back to that. And-
Although, go ahead, Lindsay, but I mean, I feel like sometimes it's the kid who was bullied that is the one that comes back with the gun. It's the meek kid, it's the geek kid, it's the, you know, I'm thinking all the way back to Columbine. It's the kids who weren't part of a clique. They were the loners and so forth. So the kids who were being
Right.
bullied.
And-
But I mean, again, there's got to be a psychological profile
Right.
that somebody can come up with, and nobody wants to have their personalities invaded like that. But if we keep getting these shootings,
right.
at some point we're going to have to consider that, aren't
Right. We also want to share, Tim Boone has also said, my kids suffer from bullying on a daily basis. Maybe that would be a place to start. Irene Persinger Forbes also said the same thing, stop bullying. And then Linda, you had also asked about mental health. Linda Salyers Thacker says
Yeah.
mental health. Yes, that's the way to go.
Yeah, number one.
So where do you draw the line, though? I mean, there are lots of people walking around who take, you know, who have mild depression and take a, you know, well, I'm speaking mostly of adults now. You know,
Right.
people are stressed out. Everybody's taking some kind of something for depression. I say everybody. I don't mean literally, but lots of people. Where do you draw the line between someone who's mildly depressed and somebody who is so depressed or so, you know, suffering
Right.
from, you know, a bipolar situation or other areas of mental health that I don't understand. I don't want to be suggesting that bipolar is a
Right.
particular instance, but other instances, you know, where would we draw the line? Who can get a gun and who can't?
Right. Well, Cindy Gates Burnett, she argues bullying has been around forever. Kids are different today, and that's related to parenting, which is something, you know, the word parenting has come up in this feed several times and kind of tracing this back to, you know, poor parenting.
Yeah, well, and
That's
and
a loaded-
again, but see, but the poor parenting goes back to 20 years ago. We drove on to school, in my case in the 70s, you know, with a gun in the gun rack, and nobody was shooting up the school. So I think that we've had some societal decay at some level because something has changed. If something has changed, then something has changed.
Tom Bannon says, stop the wall-to-wall coverage of school shootings. The reportage of these events should be limited for the same reason you don't report suicides. Tom, very interesting, you know, suggestion there. That's something that we here at WSLS 10 have talked about. How much is too much?
Well, you don't want to glorify it.
Well, right, and it comes down to, so last week, this was a discussion that we were having. There was a rumor of a weapon
Yes.
at Northside High School, and that was the discussion. I was out there at the school trying to get information, and the question was, is this something that, you know, at that point, weren't sure if there was a weapon there or not. There were a lot of police officers and deputies and state police who were there who were investigating, trying to get to the bottom of the things. But the question was, do we report this? We have a responsibility to make sure that all of you know what's going on, but at the same time, we don't want to create alarm or panic, and then we also don't want to create those copycat instances. We don't want to promote that. We don't want someone to think that you say you have a weapon at school and then you're going to be on TV.
Right. So, and I want to come back to that again because that was one of the big issues after Columbine. We did town halls.
Yeah.
But other time we have a comment from Billy Hinkle Jr. Who says that arming teachers may help teachers teach just like drivers drive. Monitors, armed or not, will be better suited to the school and the bus. Okay. Kathy Price says a teacher may get cocky and think they have guns and treat kids like bad over simple bad behavior, and she says, I feel teachers should teach and have police officers in there. I mean, I don't have punctuation in front of me right now, so I'm having a hard time figuring this out. I'm sorry. Charlie Burnett wrote in to say, doesn't seem like it would be different to take a handful of teachers from a county-funded school to training put on by a county-funded sheriff's office. That's exactly
Right.
What the sheriff in Bedford County is advocating. He says, we'll do the training.
Well, yeah, exactly.
We'll do the training.
And they'll do, he even throw out psychological training,
Right.
to make sure,
Yeah.
you know, that it ends up in the right teacher's hand, to be able to, you know, to be armed and carry a gun to school. So,